Hi, I'm Tom Galvin. I'm very happy and very honored today to be asked to interview a man who's hiding out behind his own face. My good friend and a friend to the community, a friend to us all in this community, Mr. David Reed. David, are you there? Or is
Well,
it, yeah, see,
thank you, Tom. I'm just demonstrating that we are masking and in various ways.
yeah.
Stay safe, practicing social distancing. We don't go out much, but thanks for offering to do this. We're delighted to be here.
You have interviewed so many interesting people and let the community know or kind of highlight the number of interesting people that live here. And I'm sure we've only scratched the surface. You've only scratched the surface of interesting people in this area, but you've really brought attention to the good work that a lot of local artists and cultural leaders are doing. And so I thought, hey, who's got a better story than the major domo that makes all this stuff happen? And I said I wanted to hear about your story, and then you kindly asked if I would be the questioner. So that's where we are, and this is Artist Alchemy today with David Reed.
Well, I'm flattered, somewhat intimidated, but you're right. It has been a great program, and we've gotten to meet and re-meet a lot of great folks in the community, and this is one of the things I think if there's an upside to this awful pandemic we're all dealing with, it's programs like this that I think we can continue and sustain beyond whatever return to normalcy, whenever that might occur. So we're able to reach out and engage with so many more people this way. So we love it. We'll keep it
An
going.
art scene has continued here. We can say that YubaSutterArts and some other art groups around town. But YubaSutterArts has done a lot to keep the art scene alive, even in quarantine, even in sheltering conditions. The theater's closed, but the art scene goes on. And I think you've had a lot to do with putting these shows together, these special events that we've done online. So we want to know about David Reed, and
Uh-oh.
I've got some.
Watch what you wish for.
Of course, I've researched your life steadily over the last 6 months preparing for this, so I know every detail. I've hired detectives.
You've read all my books. You've looked
Yes,
at
I've read all your books, everything. I'm fully prepared. But do you usually start with a definition of what alchemy means? Is that a general thing that we do?
Well, no, not necessarily. It's just it was sort of a fun conceit as we look for a name for the show. And
Yeah, well, I want to remind everybody though that it's the transmutation of the base metals into gold, and so we'll see if we get some little gold today. But you've been transmuting uh, ideas into gold for a long time here.
wow,
And you've been involved in the arts, and I wasn't sure about this. I asked you
yeah,
about a businessman's entry into the world of arts, but art has been in your life long before you were a businessman, which I'm learning about you.
yeah,
Um, you were born in '52.
yeah.
You were born mid-century. You're in Miami, Florida. You're down there in the
Right,
country, and your father was Edmund Curtis Reed, and he
Junior,
was
Junior. Don't forget the junior.
junior. I'm sorry, yeah, he took a job with the CBS affiliate in Miami,
Yeah,
and he was a photographer, and
which
so
which is
that
what I, of course, wanted to be for a great deal of my life, just like
yeah,
Dad.
yeah, you just like that. And so he was a role model. He was a powerful presence in your life, and he was a photographer. And you acquired an interest in that. And so let's start with that. Just a
Yeah,
little bit of. We'll get back to some other things, but tell us about your early interest in photography and what you did with it. What some of the things
sure.
were that you did with that.
Well, watching my photographer dad do what he did, and of course, a lot of his art photographs, his landscapes hung in our home in Miami, and through him, I was exposed to some of the great early famous photographers. Like I say, he was kind of a wannabe Ansel Adams, because
Yes.
even before the move to Florida, he'd photographed all over the West, and those great black and white landscapes with the dark skies. Excuse me, I always lose my voice about this time of day. We're gonna have to change the hour of this
Yeah.
interview program. The dark skies with the white clouds, and very Ansel Adams, red filter kind of stuff. So I saw the work he did. I was around it. He was a medium format 2.25 by 2.25 negative guy, not 35 millimeter. He had the big
Uh-huh.
view camera, the old press cameras. And I loved, and I got to be around that. I was in the dark room with him and experienced that magic of taking the film out of the camera, developing it, and then once dried, then putting it in an enlarger and blowing up those images on the paper, and then running it through the chemicals, and then letting those dry. And then here you come out of that dark room with this image, which is magical.
Magical for a kid. And how old would you have been at this time when you were experiencing this?
10, 11, 12, when
yeah.
I was able to go to work with Dad, it was always take your kid to work day, it seemed like. But
yeah.
So
and he was eye-popping mystery, kind of eye-popping magic unfolding here.
Incredible. And there's some of that with digital, but you forget the smell on your fingers of the developer and the fixer and all those things for those. They still teach a traditional photography at Yuba College. We toured the studio there last year, and oh my gosh, and it was just amazing what that they start the photography students out with really the basics. So I walked into that place, and it was like a total memory recall moment for me. But
you're speaking of Yuba College. This is something I don't want to forget about in this interview today. The connections you made with Yuba College and with YubaSutterArts and the interface that you've been largely responsible for connecting, putting together. I want to get to that, but just a little bit with so your dad's you're in Florida. And your dad's, you love this guy. He takes you fishing, he takes you trapping and shooting. You're in the Everglades, you're hanging out with the Seminole Indians and Mike Osceola, that's how you pronounce it.
Osceola, Mike Osceola.
Osceola, I'm sorry.
Osceola, his, I think, great-great-great-grandfather, and who defeated, quote unquote, Andy Jackson. They never signed a treaty with the U.S. government, and a large group of the Seminoles wound up actually moving to Oklahoma. But that's kind of one of the small world aspects to my life, because then being here and getting to know the Estamumeka Maidu group, the Enterprise Rancheria Native community, who are responsible for the Hard Rock Cafe that we have now. It turns out the Hard Rock Cafe brand is owned by the Seminole Indian tribe of Florida. So here we are at the grand opening, and some may be familiar with the very colorful patchwork quilt shirts and jackets that are traditional Miami or Florida Osceola tribe garments. And here were a number of the elders from Florida out for the opening wearing those shirts. And I talked to some of them, and it just, again, took me back to my early childhood.
Right. Well, there's a full circle kind of aspect of your early acquaintance with this tribe and the members of this tribe. And then how much we've had the Hard Rock people on our show, on our Sunday show, and you've reached out to them and given them a lot of attention in this area, and they've responded as well. So kind of a full circle meeting of the Seminoles after all.
It was incredible.
Yeah,
really a moment. So yeah, Dad was kind of an old country boy, largely self-taught, but we had the the World Book and the Harvard classics on the shelf. He was well read, liked classical music and Roy Rogers music. Son of Sons of the Pioneer, kind of ran the gamut. So I got a lot, through that. And
interesting man. But then of course, and here, as I said earlier, here comes the shrink in me. Here comes the psychotherapist in me. All of a sudden, he leaves.
He poofed on us, yeah.
All of a sudden, he leaves. Abandonment, would you say? Just a surprise, shocking turn of events. No antecedent, no big buildup, just gone.
He and Mom were squabbling a bit. Then there was this kind of temporary breakup where we went to Lansing, Michigan, to live with my mom's mother. I went to part of 7th grade in Lansing. That was great fun. I literally rode my bike to school in the snow. So I can claim that experience of hardship as a child, but not really. We also had an indoor swimming pool, and I swam a lot in Florida. So that was the one athletic endeavor probably in my youth that I could claim some expertise in. And so we
any competitive swimming?
No, nothing competitive, but I was definitely a good swimmer there for all these little kids from Michigan, and it was that was a lot of fun. But excuse me. But then we wound up in Los Angeles. The family moved back to LA, where I was actually born. Attempted a reconciliation, but that was it. Once they split, Dad was he wasn't far, but really just didn't have time for me or my brother, next youngest, then my sister, who was the youngest. Just really very limited contact.
It's always curious. It's always curious to me how the difference, the kind of the appraisal of a situation and the outcome of how some people have a resilience to say that's horrible, I'm sad, I'm sorrowful, it's kind of traumatic, but they move on and they learn from it, they move on, and they're able to form attachments in the future without fear of abandonment or whatever it may be. And not everybody's that emotionally stable or that emotionally lucky, maybe you could say,
Mm,
but certainly a blow to a kid, and yet
yeah.
you've tremendous resilience to move into all the areas you've moved into since. So good
Well,
on you.
I at some point I remember looking at it as a real, as you point out, a character building as opposed to character destroying aspect of
Hmm.
my life. And maybe it's good genes, and mom's family are survivors. My dad's were too, and I think I used it. I went through a couple of kind of dark years, and I mean, no major, didn't have time or money to go way off the deep end. Always kind of
Yeah.
had a good work ethic. Mom insisted on it, and she did a great job of taking care of the three of us. And but that that morphed. I mean, my real reemergence. I think I still had the photography bug. I got into that more and more in high school. Took some additional classes. Started taking headshots of actor friends, but I got into theater through an incredible teacher in high school. I mean, a lot of us have had that one or that teacher at some point in your career that really changed your life. And that was the case with Rodna Schutz, this literally 5 foot tall woman that was this dynamo and taught me Shakespeare and theater production. And I got to play Macbeth in high school, for God's sakes. Doesn't get any better than that,
In LA, I know that you were working as a photographer in LA, and you mentioned to me that uh, you photographed weddings, bar mitzvahs, corporate events, actors, headshots. You sold some art prints, so you were hanging with artists. You were involved and immersed in that world, acting, but also the photography. You kept on. And you made a little money with that. You
I
were
did. I absolutely did. I mean, I was kind of a hustler. I mean, I was painting houses, had my own side house painting business, and this started in high school. I mean, I had a part-time job at that company in Hollywood, which was an experience in and of itself. But through that, I met people who had family members getting married and or being bar mitzvahed, and so I got that work. Did some carpentry on the side. I love this graphic. This was for a college project I did years ago, and this was the cover I created, showing we could all do a chart like this, but the different aspects of my life, and then using
yeah,
using
yeah.
the Vitruvian man image in the middle. And I don't know if I'm perfectly proportioned or not, but so there you got me with a skull, from Hamlet, my Boy Scout leader days, and David Reed, businessman, and there I am with my two kids at the top of the image. And anyway, photographer, fisherman. I was also a pretty good carpenter, or still am. But yeah, so it's been a great life.
I'm checking my own ergonomics as I sit in this chair after seeing you as in that
Yeah,
inspiring position. And who's this little guy? Look at this
well,
guy.
that's me rocking my Roy Rogers chaps and gun set from Christmas in Miami, sometime in the mid '50s. I have that
Are
my
those
lifelong
chaps?
love affair, right? What do you see? It says Roy Rogers on them there. Isn't that fun?
Yes, yes. That's well, okay.
Yeah, Roy
Go-
Rogers used to visit here now. He was a
yeah,
regular in the Yuba Sutter community as a duck hunter, and I think maybe
yes. You like to hunt here? Yeah, that's I've heard that. I didn't know that. Those balloons, I don't know. They look somehow like little small animals from a horror movie or something.
they do. No, thank gosh, I hadn't thought about that. Thanks,
Yes,
not
they
gonna have
look,
nightmares.
they look like they're rearing up and staring at you. I don't know, but that's just me, I guess. But then I saw your next shot, and thank you to Alex for your Alex Asena for helping us with the
Yeah,
show. He always does, producing the show. But uh, there's there's that beautiful daughter of
there's
yours.
my lovely daughter Fiona. That was at Harvest the Arts last fall, and she was just here this past week. And she's, boy, you talk about someone concerned about safety issues. She's only 30 couple of, but she is on it. I mean, before she came to visit us, she self quarantined for 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
Made sure that we were doing all the right things before she would agree to come over. But then she came over and camped out for July 4th, which is my birthday, and spent the week
Yeah.
with us. She works from home. She's a policy consultant with a company called West Ed. They're an educational consulting firm for K through university levels, and works on all kinds of amazing projects. So she was a classroom teacher and then got her master's, and she's moving on up in the education world. So
Yeah, just met her only a few times, but always enjoy talking to her. She's a fantastic young woman, and yeah, gorgeous picture
yeah,
with you.
yeah, that was sweet.
Yeah. So moving back a little bit to your
Yeah,
LA experiences, you worked in Hollywood. For there was your company. Suddenly, the business world is starting to encroach on your artistic side, and
yeah,
you're
I know.
moving into a more corporate or a more well, I guess business oriented, corporate
Well, yeah.
oriented, manufacturing kind of aspects of your history. Can you tell us about
Well,
that?
yeah, absolutely. Because during my, during my time in both in high school and then a couple of years of community college and taking more theater classes, and fortunately, I was getting tuned up on Christopher Marlowe's play about Dr. Faust, and learning the Faust legend, and I feel like to some extent I sold my soul, moving away from the arts into this corporate world. I abandoned whatever dreams I may have had of acting went away pretty quickly. I did enjoy acting, and I love that theater background that I have. And then the photography, which, I made a lot more money taking pictures of my friends who wanted to be actors, even at a discounted rate. Like we would do some pro bono, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But there were others who hired me to take their headshots or portfolio photos, and loved that. But that was always great. But then as I moved up in this company I worked for, which was actually a division of Hyatt Hotels, and we were in the contract design division, but we basically designed and built restaurants. So I got to work. I got a hell of a construction background. I had some of that anyway, but
Yeah, where'd that come from? Did that also come from your biological dad?
No, not really. He was gone before they started letting me use power tools. But
okay.
the company I worked for, I literally morphed from a warehouse guy to kind of their house carpenter doing office remodels. They would rent new spaces. I'd have to build out the office space, roofing, just everything in between around construction. And then that led to the position with the same company to actually become a field coordinator. So I flew around the country going to job sites. It could be an underground inspection where they're getting ready to pour concrete. They got to make sure all the stub ups are there for the electrical and the plumbing and the drains and the conduits for the beverage lines. And then writing up a report and then going back when the framing is up to make sure all of the electrical is positioned. Because when you roll in with a couple of 40-foot trucks full of furnishings and stainless steel kitchen fixtures, and you hook all this up and you set that stuff in place, you darn sure better have water where you need it, and gas and 220 and all of those things. So seeing all those phases of a project, that was part of the service we provided to companies like I built Del Tacos, International House of Pancakes, Denny's, Chuck E. Cheese was a lot of fun. Chuck E. Cheese, Pizza Time Theater, that was a thing out here too, I think. They were.
Well, it was big in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I can't highly recommend the pizza. I honestly can't.
Well, that's ultimately what brought them down. They relied
worst
so
pizza
heavily.
in the world. Yeah,
it was. They didn't up their game as far as the food, but they had that game revenue, which totally skewed their bottom line. Because in the restaurant business, food cost and labor are the two big numbers, and those numbers were under 50%. And typically they're much higher than that, but they were getting 30-40% of their bottom line from game revenue, and that was like free money. So they didn't worry about the pizza. Salad bar wasn't bad, but so that was a great experience. And then I eventually got into sales because they saw, hey, this kid's bright and he's not really going to college for anything. He's just goofing off doing theater and some photography. Offer him a job as an account executive because you don't. I guess you don't go to school to be a salesman for food service equipment. So
so you're an account executive, and on the one hand, you're playing Duke Orsino in 12th Night, and on the other hand, you're a non-college graduate who's also an account executive.
That's right.
Building food restaurants around the country.
Actor by night, businessman by day.
still occasionally taking the occasional photograph as well as.
Oh yeah, that's always
Yeah,
been there. Sure.
yeah, yeah. I just one thing I wanted to get back to. You mentioned uh, your best friend's dad was an actor,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he influenced you
They
in
were,
acting.
yeah, key. Some of the people I got to hang out with just coincidentally, I mean, mainly through school, of course, that was my
Yeah.
immediate world, but then also through the place where my mother worked that eventually wound up leading to my first half of my career. But yeah, the Volan family. Mom was an opera singer from New York, Juilliard grad, who hung out
Hmm.
with all these amazing people in New York and traveled internationally. Dad, Herb Voland, is a guy that anybody that watched TV in the 70s or 80s would recognize. He was the colonel. Who was the colonel on MASH the first year or two? Clayton, was that his name?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Colonel General, General Clayton, I think. Tons of other stuff. He hung out with people like Rich Little and Paul Lind, and I got to meet all these people at house parties. And so yeah, Herb was a working actor. Started in New York, did a lot of Broadway and off Broadway, and then Mark, my best friend, the oldest son, he wound up getting his MFA from Michigan State University. Oddly enough, my mother's hometown, Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah, Lansing, yeah.
Came
Yeah.
back to LA, did a lot of theater and film, but had his own demons that ultimately ended his life in his mid 50s. And he was kind of on his way to having a decent career. So very tragic tale. But we hung out a lot, and then through that family, it just was an amazing experience. Just
His name
exposed
was Herb Bolton. Did you?
Herb Herb Voland, V as in Victor, Oland.
Oh, I see. Herb. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Herb Voland. He was kind
We
of
could
a
look him up. Maybe people could Google him if they're
yeah,
interested.
oh yeah, yeah. IMDb, he's all over it. But lots of sitcoms, lots of movie work, great stories about working with Marlon Brando, and just all the people of that era, that genre.
Yeah,
Real actors, actor.
yeah.
Just so great hanging out with him.
I'll bet. I'll bet. So, Rich, these are impressive people. These are interesting people to have met along your journey.
Well, and then
Um,
the theater, going back even further, the theater crowd we hung out with at when I was an intern at Theater West. I mean, Elsa Lancaster. Do you remember her? She was
mhm. Sure,
Bride
Charles
of
Lawton's wife.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, Charles Lawton's wife.
Charles Walton's wife. That's right. You know this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's only a couple of old guys here, but still, the cast of characters that I was exposed to and got to meet and hang out with a little bit was just
Yeah.
amazing, and it really fed that interest I had in theater from high school. So good fun, good experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So you're now you're more kind of in the business world. You're working from you got involved with Marriott. You had your business. Your restaurant business was located near Knott's Berry Farm in Buena
That's
Park.
when I started actually started my own company. I had
Yes.
all these contacts. I was married to Argyle, who was an architect, worked for Marriott Corporation. And so she was working, building a resort out in Palm Desert. I had my own business in Buena Park, right near Knott's Berry Farm, for
Hmm.
folks who know that. But
Hmm.
I feel like they kind of get lost in the shuffle now compared to the Disney empire. But Knott's
Oh, it's
Berry
big. Yeah,
Farm,
it was the place. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it. Knott's Berry Farm was fun and very close to where I worked. And I had a manufacturing company where we built restaurant fixtures and sold to a lot of these companies that I got to know, like my former employer. So it was kind of a little bit incestuous, but it played out well for several years. It was another
Uh-huh.
great
Uh-huh.
experience starting your own business. And our last year, we did $1 million in revenue, and
Really?
this was in the early '80s. So
Uh-huh.
whatever that translates to now, we were busy and doing well.
And so, how long were you in business for yourself?
That was about a 5-year run,
Hmm.
and would have continued, but we wound up deciding to move back to my wife's hometown in Maryland, Gaithersburg, Maryland. So we packed up the kids who were 1 and 3 and left LA, my hometown, and went to Maryland, Washington, D.C. area.
And you were on board with that? It seemed like you.
I was ready for a change. I think, yeah, it was hard for my mother. She said, "Gee, you've been with me all 30 whatever years of your life, and now you're leaving with the babies." And, but it was the right thing to do at the time. I had a great job opportunity. And that's when I kind of transitioned over to medical equipment and began that whole kind of second half of my business career. And the public schools were better. Housing was more affordable. LA's numbers were just off the charts at that point. I couldn't
Right.
afford to move into that neighborhood that had the better schools, but I don't know, homeschooling really wasn't a thing. And charters. I don't know if they were even private schools were out of the question. So
Right.
it seemed to be the right thing to do at the time.
Yeah. LA was becoming more what LA is now, and you had great success there, and
Yeah.
new chapter. And that.
I loved it. I loved it back east. It is different. It's a different mindset, different, and not as formal as people want to make you believe. It's pretty laid back, and that was just a great experience.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you're in Maryland now. You're close to the capital.
Yeah.
Were you ever involved in any kind of political operations?
No, I wasn't, except my father-in-law was a State Department former employee, traveled the world, and then wound up in his retirement working for a non-governmental organization that did consulting to emerging countries on population affairs. So he called himself a pop stopper.
Uh-huh.
He traveled to, do UN conferences, spent a lot of time in Nigeria and other West African countries. This really opened me up to the international scene. But my point is, I was able to go to a number of DC conferences with him. He was a member of a club called the Cosmos Club, which was started by John Wesley Powell, the one-armed Civil War veteran who was the first to run down the Colorado River. So he started this club in Washington, D.C. He worked for the U.S. Geological Service after the Civil War. And the Cosmos Club was this club of the elitist minds across all genres of academia and government experience. And I got to go to these lunchtime talks. It was just amazing, and like him or not, I got to hear Al Gore talk about environment issues, just as an example of the level of people that they could bring in and get to speak. So
this is another area where you move into a field and as you did with some acting and with photographers, and you seem to somehow accidentally run into some of the elite in that particular area. So
very fortunate, and I guess I'm by nature a curious guy, Tom. So I'm not. I got my things that I love that I've loved all my life, the arts being one of them. But I think I'm also curious enough to want to know about other things out there. Just like I said, if nothing else, the international exposure I received living in Washington D.C., which is what I love about our community. Just like in L.A. and Washington, with these huge diverse populations. We've got that here too. Every time I write the demographics of our community for a grant, I'm required to say, all right, what are the demographics of your, and it's, 50% this and 30% that and 12% this and 4% that. And it's like, I'm always reminded of that. And we see it every day. And I think that's so important to the kind of the fabric of a community. And I love that here.
And your interest in differences, human differences between people, and also similarities between people, result in a kind of a cultural diversity within the arts community. This is my feeling about you and what you've done, is that you're very sensitive to the differing traditions and ethnicities and what they bring to the community, and how we can help to have them share what's particular to their, what their talent is, or how they celebrate their ethnicity, their culture. You really make an effort to have them have a forum to share that with the larger population. And so what you were advantaged to have these experiences of seeing all these different people dealing with multicultural problems and multicultural issues. And now it's a little bit of microcosmic, it's a microcosm compared to that world, but it's one that you are a major player in presenting differing lifestyles and differing attitudes and different points of view in this community. I think
thank you. And it is baked into like I said, the cultural fabric. And, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing without Abby. Let's be sure to remember that. And
who we are trying to encourage to be another guest on Artist.
She's next. She's next. I'll hold her hand. We'll get her. We'll make her an offer she can't refuse.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Learning about what she had done before I got here, as part of the city of Yuba City, and doing the cultural celebrations. This is long before you and I got here, Tom. But these major weekend-long events, festivals, celebrating all those different ethnic groups. We did a small one It's actually the first time Abby and I worked together on a project about 5 years ago. We got a grant from the state to do a one-day cultural celebration, and she helped me put together this. This was really maybe my big introduction to the amount of diversity we had. We did it in Yuba City, right by the fountain there, where they have the farmers market,
Mhm.
and it was in the kind of in the median there between the trees. We had a couple hundred people come out, but we had performances by the praise dancers and choir from Bethel AME Church. We had the Hmong butterfly dancers. We had Native American dance demonstration. We had Chinese American presenters. It was just unbelievable, the group. We had, Roger Abe came out and did a Japanese American presentation.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember who we had representing the Hispanic community. Anyway, it was just fabulous. So the community comes out for that, I think, and it's so important to the work that we do. And I think now more than ever, with all of the social unrest and things that as you know better than I do, the things that divide us, when we really should be looking more for that common ground. And there is more common ground if you just sit back and look for it and celebrate it.
And you're one of the people that's on the right side of inclusiveness and pulling people together, as opposed to adding to the overall diversity, which we don't want to go into necessarily
Yeah,
in
I
this
know.
interview.
Yeah,
And we have our points of view about
that's
what's going
another show, but we can talk about it.
Yeah, certainly. There's the emphasis in the arts community is on how do we build ourselves up and how do we resist depression and despair, and so how do we find tap into our own creativity and our own kind of spiritual resources and resilience. And I think the arts community under your and Abby's guidance is just presents one of the best opportunities in town for people to get online, check some of these things out, get on, join some of the chat groups or the poetry stuff that we do,
Yeah.
and so I think the emphasis at Yuba Sutter Arts is to avoid political stands or stances, or to weigh in on one side or the other, but to try to be inclusive and to try to represent values of inclusion and common sense and artistic beauty. The things that pull us together are, if a beautiful piece of artwork done by Leela or poetry done by Marcello, these are people that are in the community that are doing these great works. People of different races and different ethnicities are drawn to these creative things. These art is the uniting force, and that's been, I believe, your emphasis and how you've managed Yuba Sutter Arts.
It is, and now it's, as you know, more important than ever that I don't want to turn this into it's not like a medicinal thing, but the therapeutic aspect of art and creativity, whether you're a frontline working professional artist, looking for that outlet. Certainly you as a musical artist and poet, and you're cranking out songs every week. And a lot of those pieces that you produce are, so deep. And I mean, part of you processing the unexplainable events of our day in some cases, and then some of the fun stuff you do for Art Radio today. And so art is a creative outlet for those who are creators, but for those of us who may just be watching and experiencing it secondhand, very therapeutic and important there to help process events and aspects, whether it's our personal lives or what's going on in public in the country or around the world. And art as a means of social change, if you really want to get out there with it. And whether it's Bob Dylan writing early protest songs, or any of the stuff going on today in the streets with murals and what have you, calling attention to that. So yeah, art is more important than ever. The inclusiveness aspect is more important than ever, and we do strive to bring that to the community. And to add to the conversation in the community, and this is one of our missions here for the next couple of years at least, is to bring the arts. I'm not talking Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture. We're very strong on what we do, but the whole art and culture ecosystem in Yuba Sutter. We got to get out of our silos. We got to collaborate, and we have to lift the conversation around art and culture and how important it is to us every day, in terms of quality of life for all of us, right?
Yeah, and you driving force in kind of changing Yuba Sutter Arts to Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture, and I believe this is a kind of an evolving response to what do we do in this community, and what's our are we just going to put on shows, or is culture found in the business world? Is it found in the various ethnicities around? What is the culture, and what does that mean? Uh, what's our political structure, and how does that serve us? All these things, but there's an interplay between how people live every day, the culture, and when they rise above their day to day to create something beautiful, the arts.
Yes.
Uh, and you've interwoven those two. So arts and culture kind of makes this Yuba Sutter Arts, what used to be Yuba Sutter Arts, a much bigger thing, including a lot more people who are involved in the community in ways other than specifically that they do art. They're creating the culture in other ways, and so that's what you're trying to do, right?
Absolutely. The melding of those elements are important. And it's like, all right, is it just a superficial thing you tack on "and culture" to the name of your group? I mean, it came out very organically. It's just because of the nature of some of the projects we've been involved in. And this is just, it's not like some big land grab. I think it's just necessary. When I see a grant that serves a particular need, I'm going to jump on it. A good case in point is the project we have underway with the Japanese American Citizens League. The mural. We've started the kind of the local Day of the Dead events. This has been a great collaboration with Leela Solorzano Rivera, who's was our last artist in residence. A great artist.
I knew that couple when they were alive, David.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So she helped us get this event off the ground. Now it's kind of taken off, and of course we've got 30% of our population are Hispanic, and I've always loved Day of the Dead anyway. When I lived in LA before, back in Maryland, there were some events, and now we have kind of a culture of celebrating this holiday.
Yeah.
Late October, early November. Other groups have sort of taken it on, so we're happy to start things and kind of incubate and let other groups take them and run with it.
I know that I know the Yuba Water Agency has been a supporter of the arts, and I think that there's maybe some interaction between. There's just an idea of water in this area in terms of the cultural aspects of arts and culture. That water, which gives life, how that's managed, how that's run, and how we appreciate that we have good drinking water here. You saw an opportunity to find an inroad between Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture and this whole notion of water in our community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's huge, absolutely. Yuba Water Agency has been around for over 50 years, a huge part of the economic lifeblood of the Yuba County. And they came to us last year and said, hey, can you help us build an educational program using art to teach science, the science of water and all the different aspects of water and the Yuba River ecosystem. So Abby put together a whole proposal, assembled a team of educators and naturalists, and we went out until we got stopped in mid-March into the plan was to go into every second and third grade classroom with curriculum appropriate material and start to begin the process of teaching these students about water. And some of it was about the animals and the fish, and there was a big map that was created for coloring, a coloring book that went along with it. So age appropriate education about the water and how important it is to us in our community. So another great project, another great collaboration. I just want to finish up on the Japanese American Citizens League collaboration, because we just finished a mural. Haven't sent a press release out about it yet, but it's in Marysville, and that's a grant we got from the California State Library specifically to do something around art and culture related to the Japanese American experience during World War II. Mm-hmm. Well, we have a huge community here. We created this mural that Madeline Templeton just finished, 125 feet long. It's over at 103 B Street. It's the big blank white wall that adjoins the Buddhist church. This is talk about an example of creative placemaking. This is the kind of mural I think people will drive some distance to see, because it's just so overwhelming, so beautiful. It's kind of a storyline from Mount Fuji to Yuba Sutter, sort of chronicles that journey of so many of our Japanese Americans, and a little homage, or not homage, but a little recognition of the experience of the internment camps as well. So,
yes, and every year there's been a person. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name. He's 94 years old, I believe, and
Jim. Oh no, you're gonna
Yeah.
Tanaka. Oh shoot, I'll remember it.
Okay, I'm sorry to bring up. We should have
No,
prepared
that's
that.
all right.
Well,
Jim Tanimoto.
yes.
Jim Tanimoto, unbelievable man. 94, and he'll run you and me around the block, I think.
Yes, yes, and he
Maybe
was
not you. You go to the
all
gym.
about his internment, and you've a lot, and that story has been told a couple of times at the Burroughs Theater. So certainly your focus on the Musée and what was going on there has been really, really interesting. And you reminded a lot of people that in our area, citizens in our country were interred out of fear. I guess fear.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question.
When fear rules, suffering follows. But so moving on a little bit, there's something about you, David, that I think all of us artists need to. I don't know if I should refer to myself as an artist. That seems
you should.
But at any rate,
yes,
we might think, oh, like Mickey and Judy, let's have the show right here. Let's put the show up in the barn.
Let's put on the show.
And so we kind of take for some things for granted. You're at the keyboard, you're at your laptop a lot of hours during the week, finding sources of funding for the arts, writing grants, looking up grants that you can, avenues to write grants. Who's giving away money? How can we get some of that money? How do we bring that into our community? Because it's out there. So voluminous research into what's available and how we fund Yuba Sutter Arts is on your back, and you carry that burden every week. You carry that burden well, and you bring in a lot of dough. You bring a lot of cash into our areas. I think sometimes we people who in the arts don't have the business savvy. You've straddled both sides of that aisle, and your business acumen has been so advantageous to so many of us who don't have that skill and who just sometimes think that magically there's
right.
the stuff arises, out of ether. And so I just wanted to point that out. It is true. You're straddling both the aisle there, aren't you?
It is, and I like to say that I'm, hey, I'm still a sales and marketing guy. Just I've got the best product I've ever had, and that's art and culture. So, for me, it's the perfect. I've got, again, the best job. I love it. I love the people. I love the collaboration, and we've got so much more work to do. Writing a grant for me is not that much different than commission sales. Not that I get a piece of the action. If I sell a $200,000 restaurant equipment package, I used to get whatever, my 10%. It's different than that, but at least it means I'll get paid next month. Yeah. So, and we are, professional staff, so I should point that out.
Is there anything creative about grant writing, or is it just?
Gosh, are you kidding? It is creative writing. You have to tell a story. There's some nuts and bolts kind of stuff you have to include. They want background information. What have you done? What are you doing now? Tell us about your board of directors, Tom, being a member of the Yuba Sutter Arts board of directors. But then it's the narrative, and there are questions. It's like writing to a prompt. Mm-hmm. What will this project do to impact the community in which you live? Give us a basic description of what you have in mind. So coming up with the initial idea is one thing, and that's usually a collaborative process because it really does take a village. Particularly some of these bigger grants with the NEA. You're working on one right now for $150,000 called Our Town, and it's all they want it, creative placemaking. Well, what the heck does that mean? Well, that means a lot of collaboration. It means, and they want something that's sustainable, that ensures engagement with as many different sectors of the community as possible. I mean, everybody. They want the more you can show across the board engagement and some little slice of the pie for all sectors as best you can. I mean, both this way and this way in terms of, age and ethnicity and, special needs. And we're so blessed. It's one of the things I love about small town living, if I can digress for just a moment. Sure. I'm a big city boy, LA, Washington, D.C., and then I wind up here, 2 counties, 175,000 people. But we know everybody, not no big deal. It's just, whether it's through Rotary or other boards I'm on, or just hanging out in the right places. And people are very accessible here. Our leadership, whether they're staff or electeds, are very open and available.
Well, I think open and available also to gregarious people like yourself and people who people want to know. So I think that's I think other people could move into this community and feel isolated and alone, but
It
your
helps to be
neighbor,
a little outgoing, you know. I never met a stranger, so that
yeah,
probably
yeah,
helps.
yes, and I think that there could be bigger cities with bigger theaters and other things, but if they don't have that guy sitting at that laptop getting grants, I think that's why we measure so well against other art councils around the state. Did you want to talk a little bit about our
Yeah,
ranking?
that's something I try to emphasize with our leadership. I mean, a lot of folks that know us know about this, but it's I think one of our, if you will, selling points. Why the community should be able to, you know, when you're rattling off all the cool things about Yuba Sutter, yeah, there's some things we could say on the negative side of the chart, you know, the pluses and minuses, but to recognize that Yuba Sutter Arts, and this isn't me bragging because it's the whole team, but we are one of the top rated what's called state local partners in the state. We're a kind of a local representative of the California Arts Council. It's been around for over 40 years. We've been part of it for almost 40 years now. But it's we're rated every year. We have to turn in our full report card, all kinds of statistics, and this is what queues us up for a certain amount of funding each year, plus all the other grants we have to write. But during that process, they have a panel-driven scoring system, and we're one of the top 10 in the state. Of there are 54 equivalents of us. There are 4 counties that don't have representation. We're the only 2-county arts council in the state, which is good because it gets us double the funding. But we're in the top 10 with the LA Arts Council, San Francisco, Santa Barbara, Napa. I mean, some pretty fancy artsy communities. So we need to
Yeah.
keep that in mind. We're, you know, as a rural underserved community, which is what we're called, we do pretty darn good.
Well, and you know, I know you're not it's not in your nature to brag, but you have bragging rights on this because you're very instrumental
We all
in
do, but we all do. The community does because they support this, whether it's the classroom work we do or our public of arts events or the utility boxes in Yuba City. These are all things that should be top of mind when we're touting the advantages of living in Yuba Sutter. Not always that we're 2 hours from San Francisco, we're an hour and a half from Tahoe. Look at
right.
what we have here.
Yes, that good. That's a great way to look at it. Your activity with kids around this area, you and Abby have both really advocated for artistic outlets for kids, and maybe my wife's personally involved with that,
Sure. Yuba
but
Sutter Youth Choir.
yes, but in so many ways, with dance, with theater, with so. What's that about with you, David? What's your? Do you feel that there's a special mission for children in the arts?
Well, there is. I mean, it's not to go to the obvious
Uh,
cliche.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misspoke that question. Is there a mission we have to children in this town? Is there a?
There you can always use more art, you know, and not to just, like I said, feed the cliche, but it seems like art is the low hanging fruit when it comes to budget cuts, whether it's at the local, state, or national level. You know, it's like the arts, psh, let's get rid of that. You know, the band, we don't need them. And I'm not going to pick on sports because even they've suffered some cuts.
Yeah,
I understand it. So you need both because that team thing that you can learn in sports, you can also learn playing in a musical ensemble.
absolutely.
You can also learn it being in a theatrical performance, a musical, or a Shakespeare play. That teamwork thing. So it's not one versus the other, but the arts do get whacked. So we're very proud of our arts and education portfolio, where
Yeah,
we've taught various arts in juvenile hall and at some of the other alternative high schools like T.E. Matthews, Camp Singer, Feather River Academy, Albert Powell. We've had students painting murals on the side of those buildings. They've learned poetry, African drumming and dancing. So we bring those experiences into the classroom. And that's a vital part of, I think, of what we do as Yuba Sutter Arts, to supplement those great art teachers that are in there doing it every day, like the field trip. You know, we
yeah,
took kids from Yuba City High School to LA in January.
yeah,
You know, this is not like the retail part of what we do, as I call it. You know, we try to get a little credit on social media, but we don't want to get flashing kids' pictures all over. It's not appropriate. But just to let people know that we find this funding. They couldn't afford to do that field trip to Los Angeles to see the Getty Villa and the Getty Center. Thanks to Pam Novak and putting that bug in my ear that she used to be able to do that. So trying
yeah.
to supplement those funding cuts where arts programs are cut.
Well, and doing it very, very well, very successfully. I think the notion of teamwork in the arts for kids is, yeah, exactly. How do you work with others, and how do you realize your reliance on others? If there's a performance that hangs on your line right after his line or her line, it's that reliance. It's that if you do your part and I do my part, we need each other and we interact with each other. So yeah,
Yeah.
I just always have been impressed by how much YubaSutter Arts and Culture has to offer children.
Well, we have
And
these different portfolios that that's probably top of mind for us. In fact, we've just hired Shantae Arroyo, a wonderful young woman you'll be hearing more about. She's going to be our arts and education portfolio manager going forward because we've got poetry out loud, a recitation experience for high school students, scholastic art and writing awards that we do in collaboration with the Sutter County Museum, another outlet for creative youth, whether it's through artistic expression or creative writing, bringing those opportunities to our local students. We support the Congressional Art Competition each year. In fact, our winner this year, Amelia Villa-Gomez, just graduated. She was a senior at Marysville Charter Academy of the Arts. So we've got a really great arts-minded group of students, and even some of the kids that maybe aren't interested in art as a career or going any. It's always fun to see who comes out to like things like poetry out loud. You get the big football player from Wheatland
I know.
who came out and Christian did an amazing job,
Yes.
you know, and he's off playing football and he wants to be a youth counselor, once he gets out of college.
I was there that night. And
Beautiful soul. Oh.
Yeah, wonderful. Those kids reading their poems, and some give little effort and some give great effort, but they're
Yeah.
all reading poems. There've been something about this.
Maybe the only exposure they ever get to it. Because
Yeah.
I've learned over the years with Poetry Out Loud, there's really very little classroom time devoted to poetry. They get whatever little smidgen that they get because it's necessary. And the teacher, and not anything against them, they got a whole curriculum to get through just to, finish the year out. So we bring in that supplemental kind of programming and make it available. And some do and some don't, and that's okay. We work very hard to make it available to the students.
Yes. Where's the direction of Yuba Sutter Arts? Is there a grand kind of vision? Before I get to 10 questions, I want to ask you: do you have a grand? Is there a year plan, a 5-year plan? I know there's some restructuring or reconstruction and things, but can you kind of give us a summary of where we're going?
Yeah, finding a successor is top of the list. Abby and I both agree that we're a hard act to follow, so we'll take that that little bit of ego boost. But no, beyond that, I think it's really just to continue to raise the profile of art and cultural endeavors in the community like we've never done before. And I'm always humbled though, because I look back at the archives sometimes, and I knew some of the previous executive directors, and I've talked to former board members, and there's been a lot of amazing things that have happened here over the years, back to when Joaquina had the resident opera company at the Burroughs Theater. It's just, and you meet some of her former students who are still here, and so things change, tastes change, communities change. I mean, there's always going to be the core of Yuba Sutter, but I think just to continue to ensure that our organization continues to support all the art and culture endeavors in the community, so that we can be looked to as not the answer to everything, but at least a place to go if you need help or support. We try to promote and support everyone's programs and events, and to be a catalyst. And then from on the aspect of community leadership, to make community leaders recognize the economic value. Let me be a real dollars and cents here. We're working on an economic profile of what our creative community brings in. And this isn't just recycled dollars. Okay, you're going to give me $500 for your program, I'll give you 500. This is new money coming in from outside, whether it's visitors coming to see a show or a festival, like we see on a grand scale with the Sikh festival each year, the Sikh parade, or with the Bakai parade. And those there are other kinds of, I think, cultural and artistic events that we can do. Once we get the Sutter Theater open on Plumas Street, that's going to be another major arts center for us. So we can look at those new dollars, whether it's grant money from grants that we're writing and bringing in. And we do a lot of that. I did a quick back of the envelope estimate the other day, and I think even in its current state, I think we generate something like $3 million in annual revenue. for the
Wow.
community. So that's going to start to show up on community leaders, score sheet, and
Yeah.
that's part of the vision.
Got some questions to ask you, David.
Uh-oh.
James Lipton would ask these in the illustrious actors that he interviewed on Inside the Actor Studio, and you certainly are an illustrious gentleman. I want to ask these same questions. What's your favorite word?
I do this every week, so I've had time to practice my responses. So I'm going to go. This has been dumb, and I'm going to go with love, and love all particularly. That's what we need.
Yep. What is your least favorite word?
I actually have two groups here, if I may take liberty. So anything to do with bodily functions. I'm a funny kind of guy about that.
Okay. Yeah.
And of course, all racial slurs, taboo.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
I love it when I see joy in other people, especially when that joy comes from some artistic experience. That is, as I've thought about that, really the one that lights me up.
Opposite question. What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
That has to be small-minded people on all levels who just cannot see the forest for the trees.
What sound or noise do you love?
I think you skipped one, only because I love it.
What's your favorite curse word?
Country matters. This is a phrase, actually, not a word, and I think I've heard it first in Hamlet. Something like, "Do you mean country matters, madam?" I'll let you figure out what that means.
I got you. Yeah, okay.
Got it.
Such a genteel favorite curse word. So, what's your favorite noise or sound?
I love the sound of birds, and this is a lifelong passion. I actually, even before I got into the arts, my earliest career dream was to be an ornithologist, one of those people that could, hear the sound and go, "Oh, that's a Tennessee warbler." I'm not that good. I got a few that I can do, but I love birds. Growing up in Florida, the sound of the mockingbirds at 4 a.m., as annoying as that may sound, was comforting to me because I was a troubled sleeper, I guess, and hearing those mockingbirds just meant so much.
So let me guess that your least favorite sound would be a shotgun during duck hunting season, but I'll let you answer. What's your least favorite?
I know. I got that other side of me we won't talk about today, but it's aside from the 4th of July fireworks in the neighborhood that apparently our community loves.
Yeah, well, I didn't so much.
According to the chat rooms, the dirt bikes racing through our neighborhood.
Yeah, kind of an annoying sound. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt? You had all the professions possible, so it's a tough one.
As an early mentor of mine called himself, he was what I became. He says, "I'm just an old-time equipment peddler." And now I'm arts management. How about that? I would love to be a lawyer.
Wow.
Just because of the not necessarily be a politician. That's one actually I'm answering the next question prematurely, but just the doors that opens, the possibilities in so many different areas and arenas to bring that level of expertise. I was fortunate to work for a lawyer for many years, and the way they teach you to think, I think is good.
If heaven exists, David, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You are forgiven.
David, I am an old guy, and I have traveled extensively throughout this country and have met thousands of people. You are one special guy. I am so happy to have run into you later in my life and to feel like I've made a friend of just an amazing guy. Thanks so much for being you. Thanks for allowing me to interview you. Keep up all the good work. Thank you, Alex. We have a few little things that you always like to remind people of. Who's our next person? Do we know who our next interviewee is?
Madeline Templeton, a week
Madeline?
from the great mural artist who, like I said, just finished the big, beautiful mural in Marysville.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody that David and Joe Moy and I are continuing to do a virtual art radio today every other week. We took a couple of weeks off. We took a week over 4th of July. We'll be back this Sunday, and our guests will be Bill and Nicole. No.
Yeah, Bill and Nicole.
Okay, yeah, Bill and Nicole Thorne. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Artist act, yeah. So we've covered the bases. Thank you so much, David. Thank you, Alex, for producing and engineering, and thank you all for listening in. You can catch this again at Facebook on YubaSutter's Facebook page. So
thank you, Tom, for all that you do in the community to raise the bar on artistic opportunities for the entire community. So,
well, thanks, David. We'll see you all next week.